Okay, I think we're ready to get the session started. We've got quite a few attendees ready to go.
Okay, fantastic. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and thank you to the organizers that have put in so much work to prepare us for today. The topic that I wanted to really focus on today is the 5 habits of intentional influencers and really what it takes to lead in a global organization. But even if you're not in a global organization, I think that you will find these areas useful. And so I hope that really there's one thing that you're able to take away today that you can apply in whatever area of your life and work to be able to have stronger influencing skills and achieve what you want in your life. So I'll share a little bit about my background so you can understand the context that I'm coming from here. At heart, I'm an explorer of ideas and cultures, and I've grown up in different places, different parts of the world in Europe, Canada, and spent a lot of my adult life in Australia, working across Asia Pacific. In total, I spent 12 years at global organizations on virtual teams, working remotely, and started my career in science, monitoring clinical research trials in North America and later in Australia. Later, I moved into tech, essentially because I wanted to be able to travel in my role. So this is what got me into technology. And I was leading digital transformation projects across Asia Pacific for a global pharma company before starting my business Mindquest 8 years ago to be able to work with busy leaders and help them take their leadership skills to the next level, stop wasting time and talent, and get their life and career in progress. And I was finding a lot of leaders were getting stuck and very, very busy and challenged. And yet what it really took to break the cycle was just some key skills that I hope I've been able to boil down to make them as easy as possible to implement today. And so why am I here really? It's because I believe that gender does not have to be a barrier for you in your career unless you allow it to be. I think it's really the skills that make all the difference. And I've seen a lot of leaders work their way through their career at top organizations as well as smaller startups. And so that I know that you can achieve more than you ever thought was possible. So I'd like to share with you a little bit of what I've learned and observed in my own career, as well as some of the clients that I've worked with. And I'll try to share with you what I can in the short time that we have together. And at the end of the day, at around 4 p.m., if you want to join us for follow-on Q&A, you can do that via the app as well. So what will we run through here in these 20 minutes? I want to touch on the context of global organizations for those of you that may not have been in that context before. We'll talk a little bit about what influence actually is to make sure that we're on the same page. And then I'll run through these 5 habits of intentional influencers that I've put together today. Oops. So really the nature of global organizations is quite complex. It's usually a matrix structure, and often it does require leadership without authority. And I know that a lot of new leaders aren't really sure how to go about that when they don't have authority. And sometimes even if they do have authority, it actually may make more sense to lead without it to be able to achieve a lot more. There's multiple stakeholders where we have to get alignment, which is sometimes very difficult to achieve. We've got competing priorities, competing resources, and we're often leading at a distance. Even before the pandemic started, we had to be able to lead at a distance across diverse cultures, across diverse functions. And often global organizations have a silo mentality. And so it can be difficult to know what's going on in one part of an organization. And a lot of the time, these departments do not talk to each other very effectively. And it can be a bit of a challenge to lead your career through this maze of opportunity. There's often a lot of opportunity in global organizations, but to be able to navigate it is another story, and to be able to understand what these opportunities might be, it takes a bit of investigative work sometimes. So these are some of the common things that I saw my clients experience and that I experienced, along with sometimes having to join a lot of late night calls or early morning calls around the globe, which can also put a bit of pressure on your time and energy. So what is influence? I'd love for you to type that into the chat as to what your perception is of influence. And I'd love to ask Catherine to just read out a few of the answers that we get.
Absolutely, happy to. So,
thank you. And to give you a bit of the background as to why I'm asking is because one of the key things that I see is that everyone is walking around with different definitions in their mind. And so for many people, influence might just mean persuasion. For other people, it might mean something else. And so I'm curious what it means to you.
So I'll share some of the answers that are coming in so far. So we have the ability to change other people's minds, the power to persuade, initiate or to shape change, change directions. Change is certainly a common theme, control outcomes, impact on someone or something to act in a certain way as well.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. So we've got some great thoughts. And the definition that I've got here today, it's the capacity to have an effect on the character, development, behavior of someone or something, or the effect itself. And so I just want to bring your attention to the breadth of this definition. That is, it isn't just about persuasion, but it's really about the effect that we have. And that effect is actually quite amazing because we're all connected. So even though we might not think we have influence, we usually do. And even as something as like a smile has a huge impact and influence in the world and how we affect others. And so for a moment, I just want you to think about perhaps someone in your world, maybe it was a manager, maybe it was a colleague that didn't have a very good influence on you. And what were some of the things that they were doing? So I'd love for you to share that with us in the chat. If there were some things that influenced you in a negative way, then Catherine can just share a couple of examples with us.
We haven't had any examples come in just yet, just waiting to see if there's a bit of a delay.
It takes time to process and think. And so what I'm trying to really highlight here is that a lot of the time people do not go out of their way to have a negative influence on someone, but often they do. And probably the majority of you have had a manager in the past that hasn't actually brought out the best in you. And so it's something that is really important to keep in mind and be aware of is our influence actually intentional or is it unintentional? And what impact are we actually having on people? So Catherine, did anyone share their experience with us?
Yes, we've got lots flowing in now. So not being inclusive has been a common thing that's coming up. Expectations that you're just going to make a plan work without perhaps providing the facts and the reasons behind it. Interesting one, discounting accomplishments. So looking at it in a very different way, and asserting authority or using force was another common one that came up.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing, everyone. I appreciate it. Thanks, Catherine. Yeah, so we can see that, you know, all of this has a tremendous impact on people, but also then the results that an organization is able to achieve, and it's a ripple effect. So it's really important for us to be very conscious about the influence that we're having, and especially as, you know, we get to higher levels of leadership, that influence is very, very, can have very big consequences. So I know that there are some organizations where certain leaders do actually lead in a fear-based authoritative manner. And you can imagine the impact that that can have, that people actually aren't thinking in their best capacity. They're focused on the things that might happen to them if they do something wrong, instead of really being able to think and act to get the best results for the organization. So it actually has the opposite impact a lot of the time of what a leader intends. So don't underestimate the ripple effect that you can have both positively and negatively as a leader. So I want to just hear very briefly if you can try and summarize what you would love to be able to influence. I'd love to hear just a little bit of your wishes here, and so I can try and integrate them into the 5 habits that I share if I'm able to today. What would you love to be able to influence?
Okay, so we got team motivation, upward growth, all flowing in now, strategy, excitement, strategy again, cross collaboration, influence. Yes, lots of different options coming through.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so let's dive in. So the 5 habits of intentional influencers, and if you can just try and identify the one, at least one, maybe 2 that you think will make the biggest difference for you. And everybody's going to be in a different place in their career and development here. So some of these might be familiar and some of them might be a little bit new. So I want to start with connection, and John Maxwell, he might be somebody that you've heard of. He's a famous leadership author. He has a quote, "Everyone communicates, but few connect." And I think that this is actually something that is really important to remember, that when we're communicating with people, we actually do take that time to connect, especially with the busyness in today's world. You know, I often have been coaching clients who have said, "Oh, I'm doing multiple things during my calls, etc." They're not really present. They're not really able to connect during those calls. And because of that, they don't actually have the influence that they would like in their organization. So first of all, you know, that connection piece is something that a lot of people underestimate. And what I mean by that is being yourself, so that people do actually connect to the real you, finding that ground to relate, but not losing yourself in the group thinking. So being able to still stand for something, still have an opinion, and at the same time relating to others and getting mutual understanding. The second is showing appreciation, and it's actually quite interesting to me how a lot of leaders that I've met who hold back appreciation because they think that that person's just doing their job. But appreciation, gratitude, generosity, they go a long way in connection, and you will tend to get reciprocity. That's really important to be able to create that positive influence. Reciprocity is something that's extremely powerful. And how people feel with you affects how they think of you. And that definitely impacts on your influence. So even though in the tech world, a lot of us don't actually like to talk about emotions, or they're not really common to talk about, emotions do drive people. And it's not only, you know, judgment. We often do make key decisions with emotions, and they do impact on your career, and you know, how people feel about you does make a big difference. So helping people feel comfortable and good with you is an extremely important part of this. So creating those strong internal and external networks, breaking silos across global organizations to explore opportunities. Since we're in the career track today in this talk, it's something that is really important to be able to create those opportunities for yourself, just to explore what options are available to you. I know one of the leaders that I ran some webinars at Cisco last year. She told me she found 7 of her jobs just through her network. Another leader that I coached earlier this year, she was in a global company and unsure of where to move to. During the pandemic, she didn't really want to rock the boat and lose her job. And so we started exploring through her relationships and building stronger relationships. And she was able to find a new role that she was really happy in within 4 months. So extending yourself out and really making that effort, breaking through any resistance that you feel to that, helps you to have much more influence in your career and on opportunities that you might never discover otherwise. Showing you care and inviting people into the conversation, not only focusing on task talk, what I call task talk, which is only focused on the work, but really diving down and discovering more about the person and what matters to them. Being fully present and invested, becoming a confidant rather than a competitor, and not isolating yourself based on your status as a leader. You can end up very isolated and unaware of what's going on around you. And also working remotely does not have to be a barrier at all. I think some of you may have discovered that just now during the pandemic. But for the last 8 years, I've been working remotely with everyone, all of my clients except for one person. We have built very solid, very trusting, very strong relationships over that time. So don't allow it to be a barrier for you. Another thing that's really valuable is just to think about, not allowing yourself to get into a bubble. If you're a high-level leader, it can be very easy to get isolated. And it's important to make sure that you're approachable so that people can reach out to you and so you're aware of any feedback and what's going on. Second habit is curiosity. So that takes it to the next step from connection to really find out the needs, wants, motivations, and values that people have and communicate back in those terms. I often hear people trying to influence in terms of their own values, their own needs. But if you turn it around and try to understand what somebody else needs and the values that they have and just talk in those terms, it's going to be a lot more influential. Also encouraging dialogue and trying to avoid monologue. So actually speaking less and asking more is very helpful to develop your influence, and being able to listen without judgment and thinking of yourself. So one of the biggest blockers that I see is that big, huge focus on ourselves can actually limit your influence, because if you're always worried about what other people are thinking, how they're judging you, this is a really common thing that I see. Being able to let go of that mindset and focus on others is going to get you a long way, and really just being curious to be able to communicate based on what matters to the person in front of you. So just to very quickly test your curiosity levels here, I'd love for you just to assess yourself out of 10, with 1 being the highest or the lowest level of curiosity and 10 being the highest. Give yourself a rating, and I'll ask you to type it into the chat if you like, but we'll continue on just for the interest of time. The third habit is clarity, making sure that we share the what, why, not just the what. The purpose of what's going on does matter, and a lot of the time we don't share it. Asking clarifying questions, what does something mean? Don't avoid these. This is really important, and yet a lot of people avoid them because they fear looking stupid. So it's important to be able to just ask and clarify in the moment. And as you listen, just observe and label what you notice. What needs, emotions are people sharing? So I'm sharing here a few examples for you. It seems like this is frustrating. Can you clarify X, Y, and Z? Don't underestimate how important this is to reflect and clarify along the way. That reflection piece is extremely powerful to help people understand themselves as well. And Chris Voss is an author that I would recommend for you to check out if you haven't read his book, Never Split the Difference. And he says influence is that's based on trust and understanding is the most durable type of influence. And he was a former FBI negotiator who managed to negotiate with bank robbers, with terrorists, to be able to save hostages through this type of reflection and understanding of what their needs are. The fourth is building credibility. Are you really showing that you get results? Consistency. Do your actions match your words? Courage and transparency. Do you speak up for what matters to you? And awareness. Do you ask people what they think of your leadership, your ideas, your work? And that is a really important piece of this as well. Now, I know that one of the common complaints is that people don't feel heard. So try asking a question. What do you think? Pre-framing, there's something important for us to consider, think about. And sharing a concern and reason. I'm concerned about because. So these are some little examples of the way that you can frame or try and attempt to influence if you're finding it tough to feel heard in a situation. Questions can be very, very valuable here. And that takes me into habit 5, which is tapping into creativity. So we can actually influence by creating new thinking through questions. We can explore new possibilities and perspectives just by asking what else is possible here. And using the power of the imagination to set a vision in motion or suggest a path. Imagine what if we did this or that? So that gets the mind naturally engaged rather than just saying, you know, I think we should do this, which could create resistance. So really, intentional influence is an investment in these key habits: connection, curiosity, clarity, credibility, and creativity. And it's the investment, and it's an opportunity to really build these habits and build your influence one moment at a time to something that then is actually bigger than you, to something that reaches out and has that ripple effect. And so I want to ask you, what do you think that you would like to experiment with this week? Was there anything new for you here that you think will help you to boost your influence? If you can go ahead and just type into the chat if there's anything that has stood out for you today. Catherine, is there anything that has come in from the
We're
participants?
just starting to get the first answers through now. So we've just had creativity and credibility in particular. Okay. They're the two that have come in so far.
Great. So the main thing I really want to, and I'll get you to share a few more responses, Catherine, as they come in. The main thing I wanted to just share is that you really do have the power to do this, and that it really is built moment by moment, that it is something that is a skill set and that it's completely achievable by anyone. And if you're feeling that you don't have influence with where you're at, then potentially that may not be the best place for you. And you do have the influence to go to an environment where you're able to feel like you can achieve what you want for yourself, your career, your work, and to feel empowered every day in what you're doing. I think that's extremely important. If you're just feeling like you do, no matter what you've tried, you cannot, then you're simply probably not in the right environment for yourself. So thank you so much for listening and being here today. I'll just go back to Catherine to read out any other thoughts about what you felt was the most valuable for you.
Yeah, sure. Just very quickly, because I know we're at the time for the end of the session. So credibility and curiosity, unconscious influence, and reframing using questions is very interesting, was a comment that came in.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So I have planned a 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time follow-on Q&A. If you have any questions or thoughts, if you'd like to join us there, you're more than welcome to via the app. And if you'd like to get in touch and learn more about some of the coaching programs that we have at Mindquest, you're welcome to check out our website, email me here, or connect on LinkedIn. And I'm always open to new connections. I love meeting people all over the world. So thank you for being here, everyone. And thank you, Catherine, for your moderating, and Jerry for all of your assistance before this session.
You're welcome.
Thank you, ladies. So everyone, we're taking about 4-minute break, and then we will be back with our next session.
Well, thank you, Jerry. I couldn't see your chat.
That's okay. You're fine. Thanks.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.